This video is your orientation to PSY 300G, Movies of Madness, for the fall of 2022. My name is Dr. Tamara Daly. I'm going to walk you through just briefly the D2L page and show you some other resources that you're going to need for this semester as you work your way through this class. So starting with the D2L page, when you first open up the page, and I'm viewing this as a student, so hopefully it looks pretty much exactly like what you would see when you log on to D2L and look at the class. On the front page, I have just some basic information about who I am and where you can find me and how you can make appointments with me. I don't have scheduled office hours because in my experience, students are very busy, and it just makes more sense for you to access my Microsoft Bookings page, which has access to my calendar, and you can select a time that works for you to either meet with me online through Microsoft Teams or to set up an in-person appointment to come in and see me in my office. Another thing that is on the front page is your link to accessing the films that we're going to be watching this semester through a service that Mount Union uses called Swank. And I'll talk in a little bit more about how to use that database, and I will be talking about it more extensively in class. So these kinds of information are on the landing page, including more information about meeting with me, and also access to my YouTube playlist, which has a repository of video lectures from when I have taught this class online. If you miss class or if you just are curious about the way in which I lectured about various movies that we've watched in this class over the years, feel free to access that playlist whenever you like, but just recognize it is from the fall of 2020. Finally, on the front page here, you have access to the content browser, which is where you're going to spend most of your D2L time, is looking at resources that you can find in your D2L page. So we're going to start in the content browser. We are currently, I'm recording the orientation video that will be in this space under orientation to the course. So I'm going to skip ahead to course and instructor information. Again, this repeats some of the information that is available on the landing page for your D2L page, so that you can know where to find me, how to contact me. As with most of your faculty, the quickest way to get in touch with me is through my email. I am in and out of my office constantly. I do spend a good chunk of my time working from home. So your fastest route to contacting me is email. Like a lot of people, I'm always within a few inches of my phone. So I tend to respond to email fairly quickly. And as I mentioned before, you can book an appointment with me by using the Bookings app. Your syllabi or your syllabus for this class, you have two choices. You can either access it in Microsoft Word or in a PDF version. That's the full syllabus. I also pull out just the calendar pages because sometimes people want to have just want to print out the calendar so that they have when all of the deadlines and due dates across the semester are. So I have provided both of those. The PDF version you can open in D2L and look at it directly. I will be going over some of the information. The way we do things frequently now with our D2L pages, and the we that I'm talking about is faculty, we try to duplicate a lot of the information that is in the syllabus on the D2L page. So you'll find a lot of the information that's here is also available to you on the D2L page as well. Just note that your syllabus is essentially my contract with you as a student in my class about what you can expect from me and what I expect of you. Some of the things that you're probably going to want to pay close attention to is exactly what are the assignments for this class and how are they weighted? How will they play out in your final grade? brief descriptions of those assignments, my grading policies, the grading scale, and then the schedule for the class. As I said, there's a separate document that you can print out that includes the just the schedule pages so that you can have those handy if you want to use them in building your own calendar. The course expectations and purpose, this is information that is also in the syllabus. I'm providing you here with the catalog course description. This will be the first time that I'm teaching Movies and Madness as an IC course. It is in the Global and Diversity category. The course used to be a general education course many years ago. Then we went through a change of gen ed. So I'm just rebooting the course so that it meets the requirements of the IC at that junior level. So the assumption is that you have done your foundations courses, you've built those skills in written and oral communication through those foundation experiences. Now you're taking them to the next level. The purpose of this class, which we'll talk about a lot in week 1 in my lectures, is to really combat the problem that we face in American culture, in that most American people learn about mental illness and the treatment of psychological disorders through movies and TV and through the internet, through the various resources that you can find there, including social media, including, newer forms such as TikTok. A lot of young people are starting to report that their primary source of information about mental health and mental health treatment is TikTok. And that's a very disturbing trend because the information that's found there is wildly inaccurate. And people often don't fact check what they see. So part of the course purpose is to combat that and to connect the dots with the social fact that people with mental illness, despite the fact that there's more knowledge and more acceptance now than in the past, there's still a great deal of stigmatization and marginalization of people with mental illness in our culture. And that has negative impacts that are broad and in some cases devastating. The only prerequisites for this course for you are that you've completed your foundation courses. The learning outcomes for the course, we're going to focus on critical evaluation of representations of people with mental illness in film. The logic of that analysis you can apply to any media source, print media, fiction, nonfiction, internet resources, audio resources, and so on. We also want to look to do that same critical evaluation of mental health professionals and treatment providers, because those depictions tend to be negative and inaccurate. My goal for you is to move you to a place where you can show a deep understanding of the impact of these negative images and inaccurate sources of information for real people who are facing mental illness and seeking treatment, and to think about the impact on the culture as a whole. I also want you to develop skills, concrete, usable, transferable skills, because 1 in 5, some estimates are 1 in 4 people in the United States will at some point in their lives develop a psychiatric or a psychological disorder. You need to have the tools and the skills to acquire accurate, reliable, useful information, and the skill to be able to communicate that information to others. Because if you don't personally develop a psychological disorder, the likelihood is pretty strong that someone you know, someone close to you, will. So it's important that you develop those skills and the capacity to communicate information to others. Since this is a global and diversity course, we want you to be able to pull in multiple disciplinary points of view. This is one of my favorite classes to teach because I'm very interested in pulling in people from very different majors, different types of backgrounds, so that they can bring those experiences to the table in this class. And then finally, I want you to be able to apply what you learn in the classroom to actively combat prejudice, discrimination, and stigmatization of people with psychological disorders. Now, I'm not going to go over the connections to the department learning outcomes, the diversity and global learning outcomes. Those are listed in the syllabus, and you should review them on your own. I will periodically be revisiting those as we, for instance, as I introduce the major written communication assignments, we'll review the learning outcomes that are associated with G courses. When I introduce the major oral communication assignment, I'll do the same thing there. Readings for the course, there are no readings that you need to purchase. They are all available through the University of Mount Union Library, or they're posted on a service called Perusal that I use in many of my classes. Some of you will have had courses with me where I use Perusal. It's basically social media for reading, and I'll show you here in a second how I use that resource in my work with my courses. As I mentioned, Perusal is an online service that encourages active reading, active engagement, not just with what you're reading, but also with other people as you're reading. So in Perusal, if you already have an account, great. All you need to do is plug in this code to enroll in my class on Perusal, and that will give you access. You'll join the roster, and that will give you access to the readings that I've already uploaded and created assignments for. If you have not used Perusal before, you navigate to perusal.com, create a free account, and then enter this course code so that you can access, so that you can enroll in the class. I have set up assignments across the semester, each week where there is reading, and not every week has reading. So for example, week 5 jumps to week 7. It's not because I forgot. It's because there's no reading assignment in week 6. Same for week 8 and week 10, and so on. So every week that you have reading assignments, they are going to be posted in Perusal. In some cases, there are multiple pieces to the reading assignment. So when you open assignment 1 for week 1, there's a book chapter from a textbook that is in our library called Media Madness. There are also 2 other parts to the assignment for you to read, a couple of journal articles talking about media representations of people with mental illness. So what happens when you are reading in Perusal? You are reading along and you find something that interests you, that you want to make a comment about. You highlight it and then you write your comment. Notice here it says enter your comment or question, press enter. You can @ people. So if someone else makes a comment and you want to talk to them about what they've said, you can use the @ sign and their name, and you can comment directly to them. You can also use the @ sign and the word conversation to address everybody in the conversation, or you can just add an independent comment. You can also hashtag in much the same way as on other social media sites. You can follow conversations about certain topics. In your assignments, what you're expected to do is to make a minimum of 3 comments, questions, reactions to your reading per assignment. And Perusal has an artificial intelligence that does some assessment, because my goal is not for you to repeat what you're reading, to just rephrase it or something like that, but for you to do some deeper thinking, to think about extensions, applications, additional questions that go beyond what you're reading. So you'll get higher scores for your responses, for your conversations, if you do that kind of extension. If you say something like, I agree with that, that's really horrible, or that's amazing, you're going to get low scores because those aren't really extension kind of comments. If you ask a question that just rephrases something from the sentence that you've highlighted, it's going to give you a low score. So you'll learn pretty quickly how perusal works, and I can do some coaching with you as well to help you understand it better. But once you get started, it's really pretty straightforward. All right, I'm going to go back to the content browser. So in the content browser, you have the Start Here section that has the orientation to the course. That's this video that I'm recording right now. Your welcome, your syllabus, expectations and objectives, an explanation of readings and perusal. The next portion is called Resources and Policies. The one that is different from the base policies, like all these other policies are ones that all of your faculty are required to include, or at least they're strongly suggested to include in their syllabi and on their D2L pages. I add a module on American Psychological Association writing style resources as well, because in this class you are expected to use APA style in your writing for the assignments that I provide for you. So I've given you some guides here. The ones that you're going to use the most are reference examples, the reference guide, the avoiding plagiarism guide. You will be writing basically a student paper, so you can look at the formatting of an APA style student paper. There's also a citation guide that is very useful because you will be expected to use APA citation style, APA reference style, and formatting guidelines in the work that you do for me. Where you're going to spend most of your time, though, in when you're on D2L is the weekly modules. Now, right now, I am prepped, fully prepped, through week 6. The other weeks are currently hidden from you. As soon as I am completed with them, I will make them visible to you. I'll walk you through just week 1 so you can kind of see how I lay out my D2L pages. Each page will have an overview, kind of a preview of what we're going to be working on, and some reminders, some things to look for. Then there will be a list of things that you will be expected to learn over the course of that week. There will be occasions when learning objectives extend across 2 weeks, and I will make sure to highlight that if that is the case. And then you'll have your tasks as they are laid out across the actual week. This is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, so I break down your tasks by day. Monday, your first day of class, will be very busy. We'll be going over the syllabus. I am asking that everyone try and just do an attitude check for yourself. This is not a graded assignment, but I'm asking that you really think about your attitudes and beliefs as they relate to people with mental illness before you launch into the class. On Monday, I expect you to get access to perusal. Again, none of the resources are require you to buy anything for this class. And then for people who you should be receiving, you should have, by the time you reach class on Monday, you will have received an email from me assigning you a diagnosis that you're going to use as the prompt for your oral communication assignment in this class. there will be a couple of you, and I may actually send an email asking for volunteers who want to get their oral communication assignment off their plate within the first 2 weeks of class, um, to be prepared to do that early. And I will make special, accommodations for making that, meet all of the expectations and requirements of the oral communication goals for a class at this level, but being able to still keep up with the timing and the way I want the course to work. So given that you don't know where your particular diagnosis is going to fall over the course of the class, I am asking that everybody review the Your Diagnosis presentation module in week 1 so that you can wrap your head around exactly what it is. On Wednesday and Friday, I will be giving a lecture. These will be probably some of the only full-on lecture days for this class. I expect a high degree of interaction and discussion when we talk about films and other topics related to the course. But to get you started, I really have to lay out a social psychological model for you of understanding stigma as a social problem. And then there are some other kind of first week things that you need to do. Do your reading on perusal for week 1. The deadline is listed here. You also need to spend a little bit of time on the first person narrative module and pick out a book. I have a set of 8 books. Again, all of them are free, that are written by an individual who was a young person when they were diagnosed with 8 different psychological disorders. And I'm asking you to select one of those books to read and to write an essay about. It's an early assignment. It's an assignment that's due early in the semester because I find that it really engages students and gets them thinking carefully and more emotionally about the topics that we consider in this class. If there's anybody who signs up late or misses the first couple of days of class, I did mention there's the YouTube playlist. You can watch the Stigma as a Social Problem lectures from previous semesters posted there. I mentioned earlier, Swank Digital Campus is where you will be able to access all but one, I believe, of the films for this class through the UMU library. So basically what you do with Swank Digital Campus is you'll be asked to sign in, and once you do, see whether this works for me. No, I know it will not because I'm not on the VPN at the moment. But once you sign in, you will have access to all of the films that faculty members at Mount Union are asking that their students have access to this semester. The one film that we do not have access to through Swank is Temple Grandin, and that is accessible through another service that the University of Mount Union has access to through the library, and I'll make sure that you know how to use that when the time comes. I think what I'll do is I'll create a separate video walking you through Swank as soon as I know that the films are available. They are set to become available this weekend. Before you leave week 1, you're going to want to download the reflection questions that you will need to be thinking about when you watch our first film, which is Joker, that came out in 2019. So all of your weeks are going to be laid out this way on D2L. They come with these nice little navigation buttons where you can move from one week to the next or back to the previous week each time. Just quickly, I go through the overview. With the weeks where we're watching movies, I try to lay out a rationale for why we're watching the movie in the D2L module, so it's good for you to read that. There are learning objectives laid out, and then there are tasks. With films, I am expecting you to watch the film before the class day when we start to talk about it. So in weeks where we have films, I often have a before button where I'm saying you have to watch Joker and you have to look at the reflection questions while you're watching before Monday's class when we start to talk about it. The film reflection questions, those are graded assignments, and you will be expected to go into the quizzes area, even though it's not a quiz. It's not that there are right or wrong answers. You're going to open the reflection assignment. You're going to put in your answers to the things you thought about in response to each of the reflection questions. I go back in and I give you credit, full credit, if you just answer the questions. Now, there are some caveats. If you make really pithy comments like 3-word responses, I'm going to dock you for that. But anyway, you know that. On Wednesday, we'll continue taking Joker apart. Then my goal is, we'll see how reasonable this is. Again, this is my first time through teaching a G course, having the oral communication requirement. I am hoping on Friday of week 2 that I get a couple of volunteers who are super motivated, who want to get their oral communication piece off their back really early in the semester so that they don't have to think about it. So there are 2 diagnoses that go with the film Joker that I would like to have presentations on that Friday. So I'll be working with students on that. So, each week is kind of laid out in exactly that way for you on D2L. So really the only places you're going to need to visit right away here, you're going to want to look at the orientation. You're going to want to look at the course information, the syllabus, expectations, and so on. You're going to want to get access to perusal, maybe even read the week 1 assignments when you get started. Take a quick look at the APA style resources, and so on. Each of the major assignments, such as the first one that's due, the first person narrative essay, has its own module. So your first major paper that you're going to write for this course is, as I mentioned briefly earlier, a first-person description of a person's own personal experiences with mental illness. And I have 8 books that were created by the Annenberg Foundation, which was funded through a federal grant, and that's why these books are all free. The first one is about someone with an eating disorder, the second, social anxiety disorder, the third, depression, the fourth, bipolar disorder, the fifth, obsessive compulsive disorder, the sixth is substance abuse, the seventh is someone who has complex diagnoses, but most of the focus is on suicidal depression. And then finally, the last one is about a person's experience with schizophrenia. So for this assignment, you're to select one of these books, and you're going to write a paper reflecting on that. The tasks are outlined here for the assignment. So I have links to each of the PDFs of the books, which can also be accessed through the Annenberg webpage. Your first stop is the assignment sheet. You need to read that thoroughly. It explains exactly what I want you to write about and all of the guidelines for it. Then you need to read your book. Then you need to write your essay. That essay is due the 9th of September. Use those APA style resources when you're quoting, paraphrasing, and doing your references. And then you have one opportunity to revise that paper for a higher score if you so choose. Now, briefly, the Your Diagnosis presentation, just like with the first-person narrative, it has its own module with a rationale. So the backdrop of this assignment is, I make this argument that people with mental illness are very common. While their numbers are high, they face a lot of discrimination and prejudice, and a lot of difficulties that interfere with their ability to get appropriate care. So the onus is frequently just on us to educate ourselves and to advocate for ourselves so that we get the treatment that we need as we are attempting to get better. So the assignment, the goal is for you to go to the internet, because that's where most of us get our information now anyway. Find 3 reputable, reliable resources to educate yourself about the diagnosis that you've been assigned, because people in the real world don't get to pick what disorder they have. So this isn't really about what you're interested in, other than the volunteers I may get for our first film, Joker. No one's going to get to pick what diagnosis they have. So there are some sources that are prohibited, you are not permitted to use. And these are largely opinion-based sources, or sources that are just not necessarily reliable, or they're tied to too much advertising. So there are some sources like WebMD, Medical News Today, site guides that appear to have reliable information, and the information may in fact be good. However, these are for-profit websites that do not necessarily have your best interests at heart, and they don't necessarily police their information very well. And frankly, they plagiarize a lot of it. So they get freelance writers, or they just copy information from other sources and plant it on their page. WebMD tends to, for example, have physicians that they hire to vet the information. So basically they sign off and say, yeah, that information is good, but you don't have any real author information. So I'm requiring you to find resources from reputable organizations. So you're going to be looking for .orgs, .edus, as opposed to .coms that are typically more likely to be for-profit sites. And just a word of warning, there are lots of sneaky drug company websites that are designed to look like nonprofit education resources. So you really have to be a critical thinker and dig underneath the hood to discover that the information you're reading is actually from a drug company. So why is that a problem? Well, their goal is to make money selling drugs to people. So they're going to slant the information in the direction of saying the best and only treatments are medications, when that is not accurate or appropriate. You can read the assignment learning objectives here, and then the tasks associated with it. The weird thing about the Your Diagnosis presentations, they pop up periodically across the semester. So let's say you are assigned schizophrenia as your diagnosis. That's going to be all the way at the end of the semester when we do A Beautiful Mind. If you get borderline personality disorder as your disorder, however, you're going to be going giving your presentation after we watch Girl Interrupted. So you have to really pay attention to what was the disorder that you were assigned, where is it timing-wise on the calendar, because every one of the presentation days is laid out on that calendar, and you'll need to prepare in advance for that. So you have to look at the schedule and the syllabus, note on your calendar when you're going to present your disorder in class. Read the assignment sheet and the rubric. With the exception of those of you who are going to be working with Joker, who are on an accelerated timeline, ideally, I want you to tell me what references you're going to use for your diagnosis presentation in advance, so I can help you if you've found resources that are not appropriate, or I can make suggestions if you're struggling. I also would like to look at the PowerPoint in advance before you do your presentation. It's not a make or break thing, but I can help you to build a structure for your presentation that is going to work well for the assignment. I will actually be building a template for you to use if you choose to for your presentation. And then you're going to present your diagnosis in class. I'm opting to do what many of my colleagues do, which is in class, you're gonna do the presentation because it's an important part of the culture of the class that you get some practice talking to other humans about the diagnosis you've been studying. And you'll get some feedback. You get feedback from me. We will record it, but as many of my colleagues do, they encourage students to refine that presentation, incorporating the feedback that they get to improve it, working in the DWOC studio before they include it in their portfolio. I do ask that you submit a final PowerPoint. If you choose to have an updated version of the recorded presentation, you can turn that in as well. But primarily I want to see the PowerPoint after you have revised it. The other major assignments we're going to go over extensively in class. I have lectures associated with them, so I'm not going to spend time in this video going over them, but there are modules for each one, and you can look at those to learn what they're about as we go forward. So that is my orientation to the class. I will be going over a lot of this information on day 1 of class as well, but I like to have the backup so that if you want to review the information, or that if there's something going on that you can't come to class on the very first day, you can watch this video.